My story is not that unique. Surely there has to be somebody more qualified. And I've just come to the realization that it doesn't matter when, it's just a matter of that being obedient. My name is Ransom, and I live in Yankton, South Dakota. I grew up going to church, and if you would have asked me in middle school or high school or college if I was a Christian, I would have said, yep, absolutely, Jesus. See, the problem for me was the Lord of my life part. It wasn't Jesus, it was me. Because of that, I made some really horrible and selfish decisions in my first marriage, which ultimately led to a divorce. Shortly after my divorce, sitting in church, listening to a pastor preach on, if you ever want your horizontal relationships to be healthy, you have to get your vertical relationship in order. And after he was done preaching and the band quit playing, I remember wanting to leave like I had done hundreds of times before. But for some reason, that day was different. And I just knew that I had made such a mess of my life, of my family, realizing that there's way more to Christianity than just knowing about. It's actually trusting Him. Because of that, I have always had this heart for teens, young adults, because I was deceived. I did not know what I didn't know. Kind of fast forward 10 years. My pastor had passed away, and I had met with his widow up in Sioux Falls, met her at church, and she happened to go to the Ransom church. I remember walking in to the Ransom church and looking at my wife and just saying, man, Yankton could really be impacted by a church like this. A church that has a heart to help set captives free. Like, I was a captive for 25 years and didn't even know it. And as we left church that day, I had this feeling that someone needed to bring a church like the Ransom to Yankton. So I reached out to the leadership in Sioux Falls, and I remember getting a reply from Cody just asking, hey, would you guys ever consider, do you have anyone that would feel called to plant a church in Yankton? We had some good conversations, and the answer was maybe, but probably not anytime soon. And I just remember praying, God, would you just send someone that has a heart for this to Yankton? I prayed that prayer for a year, and it went unanswered. 2 years of praying for this. And finally, it was a conversation I had with my cousin, who's a church planter down in Omaha. And he asked me the question, well, why not you? Well, there was 1,000 reasons I could think of why not me. I mean, surely there has to be someone better. Further conversations with the leadership here at the Ransom Church. And then they asked if I would want to join the Awaken network. At one point after day one, I turned to my wife and I said, regardless of how this comes out, like if they say, nope, Aaron and April, they're not ready, what God is calling me to doesn't change. We started as a watch party in my living room. Eventually moved downtown Yankton to a warehouse that was available. And I mean, it was sketchy, but we didn't care because we could invite people that we were close to. Eventually that warehouse became unavailable. We were still a small group. There was a dance studio that was available. And I approached the owners and they said, no problem. We don't do anything on Sundays, so feel free to have it. Charging is basically nothing for the space. We watched the sermons. We would do our small groups on Wednesday night to dig a little deeper into the messages. And we were really building this sense of community. So when I say that my role in this doesn't change regardless of if this church planting assessment says that I'm qualified, I know that it's the obedience that God is asking. be obedient to what I'm called to do, and that's to go and make disciples. I'm working with college students. I may only be in their lives for 4 or 5 years, and then they're going to be going off. So I have an opportunity to train them up and then send them well. People have a general idea of Jesus and who he is, but they may or may not be walking into churches anymore. And our mission is to help people realize that, like myself, being a captive without even realizing it or knowing it, we want to be there in the community to help set captives free.